Thank you very much. So what I want to do today, everyone, so we're going to go over best practices, but what I'd like to do throughout the sort of presentation is really take what I've learned over these 20 years and really how it applies to really grant management and what we've done. As I was putting this together, right, nothing kind of goes faster outside of a scandal, right, in governments than a grant. You know, you hear a grant, and I'm not kidding you, people pop their head in my office and they're like, hey, I heard we got that new grant, you know, what are we going to spend that on? And I don't even know who they are. I'm like, do you work here? You know, it kind of goes, and that's what happens when you get a new grant. People come out of the woodwork. Everybody wants a piece, right? Everyone is celebrating. Everyone's like, oh, free money, we got all this money. And the finance person's in the corner like, oh my God, like this, you know, we got to go through all these hoops, all these steps. And everyone in the break room is kind of having a party, right? So, you know, kind of what I want to do is really just talk about this and how do we manage that? How do we manage that from the finance side? But not just the finance side, all sides, right? Because grants don't just impact one area. And that's really what I want to talk about. Accountability, why just grants? So local governments, right? We deal with public funds. It's as simple as that. Grants are, you know, one subset, federal dollars. You know, might have state grant, but when federal comes, it has its own set of rules, just like the local and the state dollars come. These best practices that we're going to go over today, I don't consider them just a grant thing or a local thing or a state. It's all things. It's a best practice for all funds, all public funds, okay? You know, it's something we need to do as the finance side, but as I go through this presentation, it's something we need to do on all sides, okay? COVID, this is the new thing, right? This ARP money, this ESSER money, it kind of just flowed in, you know, kind of off a printing press, right? I joke about it all the time, like they just threw money at us. And some local governments, especially smaller governments, may have been taken aback by this and saying, oh my goodness, we don't even know how to manage this type of cash flow in. And what I want to say right now is don't be in that boat ever, okay? Things are going to happen. And that's what I put up here. If you've been working in governments long enough and you remember, you know, 2008 and the housing crisis and the economic and that ARA funds, and when that came out, good Lord, you know, they had so many rules with that, and you know, there were so many hoops to kind of jump through. So just be prepared. And it was funny when I was looking at this, I'm like, man, 2009, 2021, like good Lord, like what's going to happen in 2030? If we went through the housing recession, you know, we're in kind of a recession now, but just be prepared. Think about this not just right now, and we get stuck into that. We get stuck into what is impacting us now, and I think Tammy was just talking about it. You know, you may not be here in 5 years from now. You may not be here in 10 years. Your elected officials may not be here. But really set your organization up and set your departments up in a way that they don't have to worry about the next pandemic or the next housing crisis or whatever it may be. Utilize these best practices to take care of any situation, okay? I took this slide from Diane last month at GFOA. If you're like me, I don't like to be surprised. You know, and you hear about this 3-strike, you know, audit finding thing. I detest audit findings. I just never want to see one with me, right? So here's strike one for everybody. They're telling us where the problems are, okay? So as you are going through and you go back home and you do this, you know, inadequate internal controls, inadequate grant administration, poor accounting records and documentation, lack of written policies and procedures, okay? A lot of that comes from grants. Okay, in my experience, I felt like we're really good on a local, you know, ad valorem taxes in schools, you know, state dollars. What really gets you is when you have grants, especially federal grants. Because for the most part, like that previous slide, they may be unexpected, especially with the dollar amount. You may get, you know, a couple little small federal grants here, but not qualify for single audit. Then all of a sudden you're getting $1 million and it's like, uh-oh, everything has changed. What's going on now? Okay, so really, you know, I feel like, you know, I like to know the answers before the questions asked kind of deal. You know, here's the answers. They're telling us where the problems are. So it's on us as the finance professionals and the departments in local government to really address these before it becomes a finding on your actual audit, right? GFOA. So, you know, I think everyone in this room hopefully knows GFOA, you know, Government Finance Officer Association. But I spelled it out because I'm going to tell you a little trick here. Don't tell anyone this is from GFOA, because whenever people hear that, you know, my CEOs, my superintendents, boards, they're like, oh, government finance, oh, that's you, not me, you know, and this really isn't that. Best practices for especially what we're going to talk about today, and I'll say it again, applies to everyone. Okay, every department, your academic team for us in schools, our operations team, certainly our superintendent and our school board. If everyone is not on the same page when it comes to these best practices, we're going to be in a world of trouble. Okay, that's where, in my experience, we've gotten in the biggest problems is when people start putting different things in silos. For us, we have a grant administration, a grant programmatic team. They kind of work with our academic team and they figure out how we're going to spend the money and what we're going to spend the money on. And what I've seen is if they don't talk to finance, or they don't talk to the CEO, or they don't talk to the operations team, you get in a world of hurt real quick. Okay, especially with this new pandemic money, because there's so many facility type things that are eligible now. And when you tell facility guys they have money, holy Lord, like it's gone. Like they're already building new buildings, they're building HVAC for everything. And then, your academic teams here, talking about learning loss and things like that. Okay, so I would suggest you go over these best practices. I got the little link there. You can go to GFOA's website for best practices. Pull them. If you can get people together and talk about best practices, it may be tough because no one wants to talk about this kind of stuff, right? Don't tell them it's from GFOA. It's just government best practices or, operation team best practices or whatever it may be. Go with it and kind of get them to buy in on the front end, and you will be in a different place when you start doing the administration. Government's established process. Okay, so I think we all know this, right? Finance people understand that grants come with a lot of strings attached, okay? But you have to get everybody to buy in, okay? Early on in my career, I worked for the LSU health system and for an organization called Pennington Biomedical Research Center. So world-class research facility, does really great things. We got a ton of grants from the feds through, National Institute of Health, Department of Health and Hospitals, all this. If you think a mayor or a school superintendent or a school board is difficult to deal with a scientist, especially a rock star scientist, right? So Pennington had these world-class people, and here's just little old me like, we gotta bid this out for the grant. The science does not wait. Science does not wait. And I'm like, okay, buddy. Well, if you want to pay for it with this grant, it's going to have to wait, right? We're gonna have to go through those hoops. And this is one of the most impactful pieces, I think, to this whole presentation, because we hear this at schools all the time, and it kills me, right? Don't you care about kids? No, I hate kids. I mean, what? What kind of question is that? That's what we get on the finance side whenever we try to push back a little bit. Did you get the right number of quotes? Did you do this? Kids are suffering. What? Yes, I know. That's why I work here, But really, it's getting your leadership to buy in that these things have strings attached, okay? If you, I think Tammy just said, if you take anything away from this, it's get buy-in. And some superintendents and some CEOs are so hard-headed. I'll be honest with you, right? But that's their type, right? These visionary CEO leaders, they have a great vision, and I love it, and I appreciate it a lot. They have a role to play just like I have a role to play, but you have to find some common ground. Most of the time, it's making them think they came up with the idea, to feed that ego, and I'm fine with that. Great idea, that was a great suggestion. But really, get everyone to understand that, there are attachments, there are strings attached with this type of stuff. All right, we're going to go through the different ones from GFOA's best practices, and I'll try to interject a little bit about how I've utilized this and how it's impacted us a little bit. Process monitoring. So this is huge for grants, okay? Because usually they're multi-year, they extend over multiple periods, and things change all the time with grants. Okay, I think everyone, just like a budget is a very good financial plan, I think any kind of grant is a really good plan in the beginning, but they change and data changes, and you have to be able to adjust really quickly. And if you are not monitoring the inputs and the requirements of that grant, you're going to be at the end. Okay, and then you're going to be, auditors are going to come in and say, you spent $5 million. What are your outcomes? Did you spend this money in a way that really benefited kids? And if you don't know the answer to that, you're in trouble, right? So monitor that throughout the process, just like a project plan. The biggest success, I think, to managing any grant is doing the front end work, okay? Really coming up with a plan with all of those stakeholders that I just talked about. The academic teams, the stakeholders, the public. For us, parents and family. We do a lot of federal grants where we have to get input from all of them because this money is supposed to impact their children and their families and our citizens in our community. Don't sit in such a silo where you're saying, I'm the finance person or I'm the mayor or whatever it may be. I know the best way to spend this money. Gather input, okay? Come up with that plan together and you will be a lot more successful. Training. So this is huge for us right now. I think this is kind of nationwide, but for us, we are rolling through staff like crazy. Our school system, I can't compete. I'll tell you all a secret right now. I cannot compete with the private industry and the private sector. They pay a lot more money than we do. I can dangle the TRSL carrot in front of them. Oh, in 30 years, you'll be able to, and they're like, what? I can't pay bills right now. So this is a really big one for us. And what I always tell our team is no one cares, right? The stakeholders won't care. The auditors won't care if there's a misappropriation and it's something that we can control, right? If we didn't do the training because, we're like, oh, this person won't last. They'll be here 6 months and out the door, and you don't kind of set up that system to really instruct everybody in that stakeholder group. It's not great. It's not great for anyone, okay? Timekeeping requirements, address specific personnel issues. You want everyone to be aware of what is going on with the grant. When we charge people to grants, we kind of have that front end conversation with HR. Hey, you're on this grant. It's non-recurring grant, let's say. There's a 5-year period involved here. If we can't find the money right now, you're not slated. This position is not slated to be retained after that. Okay, good to know. You're being paid for this grant when you do different cost certifications and things like that. You do not want it to be a surprise when an auditor says, hey, look, I see these 3 people, coded to this grant. Can I go talk to them? Oh, yeah, sure. What do you do? Oh, I'm not on any grant. I don't even do that position. Oh, Jesus, right? That's not a place you don't want to be. Appropriate cash management procedures, drawdown. This is a big one for a lot of smaller groups, okay? Because a lot of federal grants are reimbursable grants. So you have to manage cash flow with this because with us, we're smaller, we have a real small staff. So I can't do claims monthly. I just don't have enough person power to do all that. We submit quarterly. But I need to make sure when I'm spending these very large expenditures and cash out that I have some kind of flow that it's not going to kind of bankrupt this and I can't make payroll before I get that reimbursement back. Okay? So when you're kind of going through everything, make sure if you don't have a lot of cash reserves or working capital that you're talking to your bank. Right? You're talking maybe lines of credit, things like that, to ensure that you can utilize that grant fully, okay, but you don't run into a cash flow issue. If you're submitting quarterly, I've seen some smaller groups maybe, don't get around to submitting semi-annually, which is crazy for me because, I need that cash. But really, you need to think about that as well, okay? Allowable, necessary, reasonable. I think that's kind of an easy one. I think when you're going in the grant and you're on that front end, this is really the planning, okay? For the most part, a lot of grants will tell you what's allowable, what's not. If you're talking directly to the federal government, it can be a little difficult. We have sort of a subgroup, the Louisiana Department of Education, that's great. That helps us with a lot of those. They're sort of a middle person in between us and the feds. But we also have some federal direct grants, okay? That's a different world. When you are not dealing with sort of this middle person, you're dealing directly with the federal government, it's a lot more difficult, I'll say that. So you need to make sure you're building that relationship with your program officer there to kind of understand what's allowable, what's not, and go through it that way. Indirect cost, if you're going to have them, I have a bunch of slides at the end that talk about indirect cost, but if you're going to allocate indirect cost to any grant, there has to be a methodology associated with it. You just kind of can't pick a number out of the air. It's very difficult if you don't have that middle person that's kind of working, with you. We have the Department of Ed that has like their own methodology, and they, utilize our financial data to generate that for us. But I'll talk about it a little bit more when we get to indirect costs. But if you don't have that and you're trying to build that on your own, there's some specific kind of, hoops you need to jump through. Sustainability. So this is huge. I was just talking to Leon here about this after, these care funds expire. So one-time revenue is great. It can do a lot of wonderful things, okay? But your stakeholders, for us, our teachers, they don't care when that money runs out. Okay, they just know they were getting benefits for 2 or 3 years, and now they're not. Okay, so really communicating that and developing a plan. I'll tell you, for us right now, teacher shortage is a nationwide problem. So what we're doing is trying to retain every great teacher that we have in our organization. So we're utilizing a lot of retention stipends to do that. Is it a stopgap? Absolutely. I know that. But I also know in 24, 25, when we don't get a retention stipend, everyone is going to have kind of pitchforks and torches. So we're working now on figuring out a way to sustain that or to slow play it out, right? So even if we reduce it over maybe 2 and 3 years till it goes down to nothing, that's a better pill to kind of take in than just an abrupt stop. Okay. Integrate annual, grants. So of course, I think we talked about it here with the 5% variance. When you get those budgets, those grants, new grants come in, you still have to allocate those funds. Okay, it's not just some separate thing where it's like this slush fund on the side where, oh, don't worry about that, it's a new grant. We'll just do whatever out of here. You got to incorporate that into your local budgets. You've got to figure out how you're going to allocate that and spend it and track it. I talked about cash flow planning. And contingency plans, sustainability. It's really important. I'll tell you this, in most of the places I've been in, the CEO doesn't want to think about that. The academic team doesn't want to think about that. They want to use that money now to impact it, and they're more of like, oh, look, we're doing the budget, and where's, $15 million? I'm like, were y'all not listening for 3 years? I was telling you this is going away, right? So really, take that upon yourself to figure out that plan, whatever you're going to do. I think complying with GAAP and grant requirements, I'm going to talk about some tips for this in a couple slides, but in my experience, auditors are not enemies, right? They're not these evil people that come in and, with mask on and, kind of take over. I talk to my auditor all the time. We have conversations, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? I share ideas with him. I know the LOA team, Diane, Jennifer, there's resources there. Talk about it. I don't think anyone wants any local government to be in the wrong. I think there's enough people around to set us up straight to get us in a good spot. Identify and segregate costs so I think I have a slide on this, but I'll talk about it now. Your chart of accounts can do a lot of things, okay? If you have a chart of accounts that doesn't segregate by expenditure types, by funding sources, by different grants, you really need to look at changing that. Okay, your chart of accounts can drive reports. It can drive your financial software. When we started Inspire, we only had 2 schools, and there were 4 of us, right? And when we were kind of building and we were doing the new thing, someone said we're gonna use Excel as our accounting software, and I'm like, oh my God, okay. But one of the best things we did is we reached out and we talked about the chart of accounts, and for schools it's Laugh Guide. They give kind of a set rules on it. But setting yourself up on the front end can really help with this segregating costs and this allowable costs, and allow you to identify a lot of things, especially when it comes to Sifa and a couple. Do not be afraid to change your chart of accounts if it is not serving you. Okay, I know a bunch of organizations that have done this. Is it a pain? Yes. As much of a pain as it is changing financial software. Okay, but if your chart of accounts is not serving you and serving the purpose, I would absolutely say to do it. Okay. Capital is another thing. I think inventory control, same thing. Grants, the federal side has a lot of requirements on what's a capital asset, what's not, what's inventory, what's not, and then tracking for that, especially with this ARP money. A lot of capital assets have been purchased with this money. Buses, we've done buses, we've done a lot of large-scale HVAC equipment, things like that, that there's kind of certain rules for that are different than just consumables. Okay, so you want to be able to identify that and then also know how to treat those as well. Grant procedures, internal controls. We're going to talk about internal controls in this whole group of slides, so I'll kind of go over this one right now. Considering program risk. So this is good. If this is your first federal grant in a while, let me tell you, you're super high, right? It's as simple as that. Treat it that way, okay? let everyone know that y'all have high risk just because y'all don't normally do this, okay? If you tell people high risk, their ears perk up, right? And they start to listen a little bit. You can get it, then they start to listen to the finance people, okay? So use that language. It's not bad language. Jobs, Best Buy, whatever. Let's see, subrecipients are, kind of its own little beast. If you don't have this, what I will say is if you are a subrecipient of another grant, reach out to someone that has already gone through that. It helps a lot. There's a lot of nuances involved with that. That's really hard to manage on your own if you really have not done that before. Reach out. This is huge. Communication. I say this all the time. Communicate with your people. Okay, if it's a program officer, I was talking to another CFO and we were talking and they were so worried about something that was going on with their grant. I'm like, well, who have you talked to? Well, no one. I don't want them to know. I'm like, you don't want them to know your question? What are you talking about, right? Ask those questions. They're not gonna say like, I got you. Oh man, I hope not. But talk to your federal program officer if you have a direct, talk to your LDOE, talk to people, communicate, and communicate this information out. Don't hold on to this information, spread it. Spread it to your superintendent, spread it to your mayor, spread it to whomever it may be, so that everyone is on the same page, okay? Don't let one person, be it, the CFO or whoever it be, or your grant program, to hold all of that information, okay? And auditors, talk to them too. I found that they're super helpful. If you have an auditor that doesn't answer your call, an external auditor, maybe it's time to get a new auditor. I think everyone has time to answer questions or to have that open communication. If the only time you ever hear from your auditor is when they're doing the audit, that's kind of a red flag for me personally. Because we're on a team. They're making sure, statements are materially presented, all that stuff, and so am I, right? Anything specialized, you need to make sure in your procedures that you have that for reporting. Some grants have very detailed reports that they want. The feds may come down, and it may change. I think, with ARP and ESSER, the big thing was get money out, right? Get money out, get money out. And then as they sort of were getting this money out, it felt like a new report was coming in every other week. Like, now we want this information, now we want that information. Make sure you're staying on top of that and you're tracking that to really, you don't want to do all of this at the end or when the report is due. It's too cumbersome that way, okay? Generally accepted audited standards, the audit requirements, audit procedures. I think when we talked about the audit presentation a little bit earlier, all the same things apply to grants, right? Use all those same best practices there with different standards and different gap to make sure that you're following with your grant requirements as well. All right, so here's some tips that I've learned throughout my years. Network, okay, not conference networking. And I always joke about this because whenever I see a travel requisition come across my desk, oh, it's PD, we're gonna network. And then people go to a conference and they only talk to 3 people that they came with and like some vendors, to get those little weird stuffed animals and pencils and all that junk. And I'm like, oh, great, who'd you network with? Oh, well, I didn't really talk to anybody. What? Okay, if you are going to something like this or something in your industry, these people are all the experts. Talk to them, get to know them. I am really big on not reinventing the wheel. The federal government's been around a long time, okay? There's a lot of people in this room, there's a lot of people who are retired that have done this forever and ever. It was one of the biggest challenges when I was a new CFO. You feel like, oh yeah, I'm a CFO, I'm all strong, and I'm gonna do this on my own, I'm gonna rewrite all the policies and procedure manuals myself. What? Looking back, what a waste of time, right? You have people out there. And the good thing is now, if you're an introvert, right, you don't even need to talk to people. I think conferences now give all those email lists, whatever. Just find someone who's smart and who's talking, and like, wait, what's her name? Look, and just email and be like, hey, I saw you, I talked to you at the conference. They won't remember who you are, right? Be like, oh, it's great talking to you too. Do that though, okay? Especially with grants, especially if you're not really involved with this, or this may be your first time getting some grants, okay? Outside of your circle. So this is a big one for us too. If you are a small local government, right, a town, whatever, every parish has a school board, okay? Every school board has somebody in charge of finance, business manager, CFO. I promise you they have tons of federal grants, right? They have grants out the woodwork. Okay, so no matter who, find out who that person is, that should be your first point of contact. It doesn't have to be, oh, I want to go town to town. Oh, hey, what's up? You have a town of 500 people, so do I. Let's talk about it. I don't know. Find the school board CFO in your parish. I can promise you they will steer you in the right direction, okay? And this takes me to my next point. Find a mentor, okay? This is funny, but look, I like to think that I will answer questions. I give people my email address, like, hey, if you need help or whatever, give me a call. But people are busy, right? People are busy, it's a fact. And I had this gentleman a number of years back that worked in private industry for like 30 years, Fortune 500 company guy, super smart. And he came up to me and, we're talking, he's like, hey, can I talk to you? I got some questions, I'm new to school finance and all this. We talked a couple of times. He came up to me, he said, hey, I have a question. I'd like you to be my mentor. And look, I'm like, what, a mentor? Okay, yeah, that sounds great, okay. So look, now when that guy calls, I'm like, oh, it's my protege. I answer him every time he calls because, let's be honest, he played to my ego. What am I gonna really mentor this guy? But, some years later, he was, I kind of joked with him, I'm like, what were you talking about? And he's like, you were the expert in school finance. I was not. I'm trying to learn. It doesn't have to be an age thing. I don't have to be, this 80-year-old guy to be a mentor. He said, you know the things I want to know, right? So look, do it. It doesn't matter how old you are. Young you are. Find someone who knows, ask them to be your mentor. I guarantee you, they will answer whenever you have a question. They'll answer every email you got, okay? Do things like that to kind of, like I said, not reinvent the wheel. Set yourself up for success. Okay, this is it, the number one tip of the day, okay? Google it. My kids tell me this all the time. I don't even know that, I'll just Google it. I am not kidding you. Throughout my career, be it AL numbers, CFDA numbers, grant requirements directly from the feds, right? Google it. And if you do not know how to Google, and I'm not talking about just putting in, some words, I'm talking about really know how to Google, this is my tip. Put in that box, how to search on Google. And you will really learn how to search. Quotes for, specific phrases, minuses, pluses, colons to kind of extract. And, there's a way to search on Google where you won't have to go through the millions of pages of junk to where you can find answers really, really quick. I've seen great policies and procedures from different school boards across the nation. I've seen, stuff directly from the feds that I've never seen. I bring things to my program officer all the time. I'm like, why didn't you give me this? This is great. And they're like, well, I didn't know about that. There's things out there that I'm not kidding you. If you know how to search on Google, you will be leaps and bounds when it comes to grant administration. Okay? Internal control policies and procedures, grants policies and procedures, Sifas, templates. It is great. Do that, and that's a free tip. Internal controls for grants. I'll say this, internal controls for grants are like internal controls for everything else, okay? I think we all know COSO, the framework for internal controls. I tell people this every chance I get. It is not our money, right? It is the public's money, and it could be a federal grant, it could be, my friends and family with local grants, it could be states, but treat it like you treat your local side, okay? Because look, when federal auditors come in, if you've ever had, I think everyone has external auditors, right? Great, and then the legislative auditor may come in. If you get an audit for the Office of Inspector General, good Lord, I've had one in 20 years, like they don't mess around. And they want to see details to the detail. And I'm like, man, are y'all kidding me? Set up shop, everything. So treat it like that. I tell my team all the time, treat it like the Office of Inspector General is coming, okay? Treat it like they're gonna look at that. Treat it like someone who's not getting the goods and services that we promised through those taxpayer dollars, that they're not getting that and they're coming to question you. It changes that mentality a little bit. Financial reporting, I think the same way. Control environment, risk controls, monitoring. I will say this. Oh man, I'm going too slow. I will say this. Grants sometimes can be a little bit loose if you're not used to having those grants, right? So you may get this new money and maybe it's kind of free flowing a little bit, but you want to make sure that the internal controls that you set up on your local and your state side that have worked for decades, that you're still applying those same principles even to new money, even to new federal grants. It's not this kind of outside one-off thing. I've heard people say, oh, don't worry about that, it's just a grant. I'm like, what? What does that even mean, right? It's just a grant. But everything that you're doing there, information, monitoring is huge on the internal control, because for one thing, it's usually non-recurring stuff, right? So you're not used to seeing that. They're not used to charging that. It may be things that we have never purchased in the government or the school system ever. This grant was specifically for it, and people just aren't used to that. So the monitoring is a big part of it. Control environment. I hear this all the time at all these conferences, the tone at the top, okay? Sometimes it's great. Sometimes your mayor, your leader, your superintendent has this tone at the top that we're not gonna allow any funny business, that we're gonna stick to the rules, perfectly, we're gonna do everything. And most of the time, those people became that CEO from the finance side, right? That's how that happens. I have also had teachers or, CEOs that come from the teaching side. And I'm like, oh my God. What? And they just want to get things done. They don't care about anything. It's just get things done. And they say that in meetings. Oh, don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. We're just going to get it done. And I'm like, okay, well, this makes my job a little bit more difficult, okay? But make sure that you can relay that to everyone in your organization. Develop that relationship, that we're not going to let it slide. It pains me. It really does. It's funny. I just got calls today. We have something for our straight A students. They're going to see The Lion King and the Sanger. We have a little grant, and they're going to go do that. But no one thought that they needed to eat. And so now they're at the Sanger like, oh, we need to eat. Somebody give us a credit card. I'm like, oh, buddy, you're not going to like me. Because that's not how it works. That's in my mind, that's poor planning. I didn't think that they needed to eat because none of the documentation, none of the requests, none of our discussions had talked about that. And now, I have a principal that's like, hey, just slide me the credit card and I'll bring you back. And, how much is it going to cost? Oh, I don't know. We're going to go somewhere on Canal Street. Like, what? Man, what? This is what you're dealing with, on that side of the house. So you have to kind of monitor. You have to ensure that that is happening, on your control side. Hold staff accountable, give staff. I'll tell you this right now. So I'm dealing with this a lot because we personally, and I think nationally, we're in sort of a staffing crisis, right? We're in a teacher shortage. We're in even on my side, in the accounting side, we've had some vacancies that I've had trouble filling. And the easy thing is to not hold those people accountable. Like, oh, let it slide. I don't want to rock the boat. I can't have that teacher be so upset about this Lion King thing that they're going to quit, right? Geez, really. But we have to, and I tell, I don't fight with my CEO about this, but I'm like, we've got to hold the line here. This is the rules. This isn't our money. If it was my money, sure. Look, if I was at work, I'd be like, hey, here's $20. Go get those kids some, dollar cheeseburgers or something like that out of my pocket. But it's not my money. I can't just do that, okay? So holding staff accountable to do that, through write-ups, as much as I hate to say it, through some disciplinary procedures, sometimes that's the only way to get across that this is not allowable. Because I've also had people, even at a director level, continuously I wish we had the 3 strikes rule, right? Like, this is the third time you're out of here, okay? But they'll just continuously make the same mistakes over and over and again.
You know what? When I said I was going to raise my
Yes, ma'am, right here.
But coming to these conferences is great because, like you said, about the networking, and we were talking about the spending the money. One of the things that I have found is once you have a rule and you let them know, because knowledge is power, then when they make an expenditure and they don't get reimbursed,
that's right,
that hurts the pocket.
Yep.
But you have told them, you have educated them, you have given them the sheet that says, guidelines for public use of funds.
Yep.
And so, once they go out and spend the money on their credit card and they don't get reimbursed, they will stop. So I tell people all the time,
true.
I love coming to these conferences to network with people who I don't know, and I make new friends because I find out lots of information. Like, I probably won't have a job when I come back because I'm talking about those students, and my boss does not want to issue W-2s, 1099. So
one of the easiest things that I found, yeah, what I found really works on the internal control side is if you can copy your policies or procedures, you know, that little snippet tool, we do that all the time in an email. Oh, I would love to reimburse you, but according to this policy, I can't, right? According to this, you know, I would love to do it, but I can't because of this. And that usually stops a lot of people in their tracks because they know, one, they probably should have read that policy when they checked that little box, you know, at the beginning of the year. But then two, they know there's nowhere to go with it, okay? Cost benefits, you know, new controls. Controls are a crazy thing, right? So I can make the most secure, tight control system ever, but it's going to cost a lot of money or time or admin costs. So really you want to make sure, especially for smaller local governments, that you're balancing the highest priority measures that can produce kind of the greatest benefit while, you know, money's not unlimited and time's not unlimited. So with your control systems, you want to make sure that you find that right balance, that you feel that you're still protecting the public interest, right? But that's still attainable. Grant procedures, you know. So we have a grant manual, you know, and it has a lot of the same type of procedures and policies that our normal accounting policies and procedures do. But it's good to kind of break them out sometimes. That way, if you're dealing with specific grants that relate to, you know, a new grant program manager comes on, we give that person the grant manual. Like here's all your policies and procedures that are going to relate to this. When we get a new grant and we have a new person, same thing. Okay, sometimes it's easy to digest that, especially when you get reporting requirements or different policies that are only related to that grant. This usually happens a lot of time when you have non-recurring grants, right, where it's this one-off, like this ARP money or this ESSER money. So, you know, I think this is pretty self-explanatory. Your technology, we got to make sure that your financial systems are in a way that can, you know, are accurate and can control. You know, we talked about a lot of this when we were talking about that Excel software. I'm like, we can't use Excel. What are you talking about? I can manipulate everything in Excel. It's not going to work, right? So even if you go to a QuickBooks, you know, when you're smaller and then you graduate up to, you know, a Munis or whatever it may be, you want to make sure that you understand, one, the control systems within that software, right? And that you know how to utilize it. So I've seen, you know, I've worked with some groups where the best financial software in the world, right? You know, super expensive, all the bells and whistles, you know, and I open it up and everyone's an admin. I'm like, oh boy, you know, the greatest system in the world is not going to solve that, right? Everyone could do everything. You could delete, you can add, you could do whatever. Like that's the kind of things you need to look to, especially, you know, when you got money that you're not used to really spending. Let's see, procurement, you know, the department list, the same thing, you know, applies, you know, on the federal side. Procurement's a really big, hot, you know, topic issue. If you haven't sat through, you know, a federal procurement, you know, LASAFAP does a great job at this if you haven't gone to that conference. You know, the federal rules have changed regarding procurement recently. You really want to make sure you know those. Look, Google it. It's super easy. Find it on Google and, you know, find federal procurement policy and you'll get it. Don't look through Edgar. Oh my God, has anyone done that? You know, the guidance and regulations on the federal side? You don't want that kind of pain, okay? Just Google it, find what you need, talk to your mentor, and they'll put you in the right spot. Information and communication, I think I have a slide on this, but really your chart of accounts I found really helps you do this. If you can distinguish grants by source, you know, there's a little segment in your chart of accounts that distinguishes that. You know, local, federal. This really helps when you're producing your Sifa because you could just pull out those federal expenditures from that. If you cannot do that from your chart of accounts and your financial software, like, listen to me, please, like, look into something else, okay? Because it should be so easy as long as you're doing your work throughout the year. Identify the time period, same thing. The frequency matters. You know, quarterly works for us. You know, we reconcile, we submit claims, we get all of our documentation. If you were trying to do all that for a grant at the end of the year when the auditors are kind of standing in the doorway, you're in deep, deep trouble. Okay, maintain that throughout the year, and at the end of the year when the fiscal year closes, you're in a great spot. You know, you can take vacation all of July and, you know, August. Specialized administration, you know, same thing. Ensure that grant information, so don't hold back, right? I found like that's a terrible place to work is when you have someone that's like, oh, I've got to hold all this information, that way I can never be fired, right? Because now no one else knows what to do. Share that information out, share it to the different stakeholders in your organization so that everyone is on the same page, everyone knows what is going on. I mean, if you have to resort to those tactics, I mean, you're probably a terrible employee, right? Just quit, find a new job. But before you do that kind of stuff, but communicate, get there. Single audit, information, same thing, grant decision making. This is a big one for us because, especially with these ESSER funds and ARP funds, things have changed. So it was huge for us. We did a lot of virtual learning during the pandemic. Our schools were closed down. I'll say this in this room, and it's my personal belief, it was terrible, right? It was terrible. The kids need interaction, especially in early childhood. They need to see a teacher. They need to see mouth, sounds when they're trying to learn to read. Virtual just wasn't it. So when we came back and we're dealing with this gap now, some say 2.5 years lost of learning time, whatever it may be, but you've got to move quick on it. Okay, as we are getting assessments, as we're getting data, what we thought we were going to spend, for the 3 years of this grant has totally changed. Okay, and you need to have that information in a way that you can make those decisions as long as they're allowable by the grant, and follow the scope of the grant award. You've got to be able to be fluid on any grant. I've never experienced a grant in my life that whatever we thought we were going to spend it on at the beginning was what we spent it on throughout the entire way. It just doesn't happen like that. Same thing, periodic programmatic controls. I think we talked about like those periodic expense reports. You need to monitor this stuff in some kind of way, not only from the financial side, and this is where it matters when you're with your academic team or with your mayor or with your superintendent. Everyone needs to monitor what's going on, because if something is terrible and it is not producing the outcomes of the grant, you need to change it. I don't think anyone wants to sit up before their board or their governing body and say, yeah, we got $15 million, but it did absolutely nothing. Nothing has changed. That's a bad spot to be when you're in a public meeting and the taxpayers are looking at you. Responsible parties management. Segregation of duties. Look, find someone. Do not be, if you are this person with custodian, authorization, recording, reconciliation, you do all that stuff, look, I'll talk to you in the hallway. You got some problems, okay? You do not want to be that person. And like I said, when we started, we had 4 people. Myself, another finance person, and 2 co-CEOs. We segregated everything because I did not, look, even if that person was like, I'm like, you got to review it. Review it. You record it, I'll cut the checks. Whatever it may be, you've got to find a way to segregate things, because you don't ever, kind of like the fraud piece and the fraud triangle and all that, you do not ever want the perception of fraud to be on you. Whenever, they're doing that, money's missing or something, everyone's looking around, like, I don't know, Diane's the only one who ever touches that fund. Oh, well, who reviews it? Well, just Diane. Who signs off? Oh, just Diane. Even if Diane did nothing, she's like, oh boy, this is not a good place to be, okay? And you do not want to be with that with any federal grants, okay? There's some pretty severe consequences, right, with grant mismanagement. You could lose federal funding. And for us, we have a lot of recurring funding, a lot of funding for special education, for food and nutrition, all these type of things. If we lose federal funding, we in deep, deep trouble, okay? So that's another tip. Just find someone, even if they don't want to do it. If you're in a group and there's 2 of y'all, you're like, it's me and you, buddy. We're going to switch these back and forth, okay? So that at least someone else is getting eyes on it, and you can kind of break up this chain. What I got, like 15 minutes, Sam? Is that right? So this is another thing. What does your policies and procedures say? Okay, we talked about this. We can talk about best practices and everything till we're blue in the face. Okay, but what is adopted for your organization? What do they say y'all do? I think when the auditors come in, the Office of Inspector General, look, that guy didn't even say hi to me. They're like, what are your policies and procedures? I'm like, well, nice to meet you too, buddy. Right? Because that's all they care about. They want to see what's on the books, and they want to see if you are following that. And in my experience, even if you are following what's on there and it may not be accurate, you're in a better spot than if you have policies and procedures out there and you're totally doing something opposite. Okay? So these best practices, we can review these till we're blue in the face. But if your policies and procedures are a one-pager and they're like, we do things, it's not going to be a good spot. Okay? So especially if you have a government or a small organization that's been around for 100 million years, right? So don't worry about it, it's there. We have a policy for that. We got new things coming with sexual harassment. There's a lot of stuff with Title IX. Oh, I'm sure we have a policy on that somewhere. Don't worry about that. And then when you start digging, it's like a one sentence, like, we don't like sexual harassment. Oh boy, really? That's all we got? So, kind of review that. Make sure This best practices from GFOA are good sort of template or guidelines for you to follow when you're reviewing your policies and procedures. And look, I will say this, no one wants to do this. It's the worst, right? No one has time to do this. I'm doing payroll, I'm doing grant reimbursements. You know, the biggest thing that I hear when I talk to people about this, oh God, we'll have to hire somebody to review our policies. We'll have to contract out with somebody to do this. But really, it's what governs you and your organization. So, you know, if you have to take a little retreat and close the door and say, look, I'm on vacation for a week and really you're in your office just looking at policies and procedures, you know, kind of get to that. Don't just keep putting it off, because that's what happens. People put it off and then you leave, and then the next person puts it off, and then the next person, and then sooner or later, no one knows what to go off of, okay? All right, Sifa. So I want to make sure I get to this at least. So Sifa is a, you know, people freak out over the Sifa. You know, it's very scary. Like, you know, oh, we've never done a Sifa before. Oh my God. You know, I mean, it's nothing. It's the most basic, easy thing to do. Do not let it scare you. Talk to your mentor, right? Talk to your other groups. But really, you're just showing what your expenditures are on the federal side. That's really it. And a way that they can stick in your audit report and the public can kind of see. What I will tell you is this, you know, you want to have policies and procedures on how you generate your Sifa. That's the hardest part in my mind. It's how are we going to make sure that this is accurate? What procedures are we putting into place? And again, from the tip earlier, Google it. There's a million. It's great. Find one that's really good. Do find and replace. Put your organization in it, right? It's amazing. But a lot of this stuff can go from a couple different things. One, your chart of accounts. If you have a good chart of accounts in a financial system, you can pull federal expenditures out by type. You can even put whatever the, you know, you may have heard of CFDA number. They call it an AL number now, assistant listing. You're going to need that. But a lot of this information here, you know, it's got to be a single audit act. Was it, Diane, 750,000? Is that right? You know, single audit act, you spend, you know, over 750,000 on federal awards. Now you got to do this. The biggest question I have is its amounts expended, right? It's not the amounts, you know, you were awarded. Oh, I got an $8 million grant. Now I'm doing a Sifa. No, it's how much did you spend in that year? You know, and again, you should be able to pull that straight out of your financial software. It's government's management. This is a big problem that a lot of people run into. Well, my auditor didn't prepare that for me. You know, that's on you. You prepare the Sifa. Okay, you have all the information, you're monitoring. It's your policies and procedures, right, that are governing how you're going to do that, but you have to do that. You know, electronic files. So this is the trick with federal awards. Find the GAN. Find the grant award notice. Okay, it will have every piece of information that you need to complete your Sifa on that. Sometimes it is difficult, I will admit. You know, we get, you know, sometimes there's money that just pops in our bank account. And I'm like, what the world? What is this from? You know, but somewhere, if you're getting federal dollars, there's a grant award notification somewhere. And it will have everything you need on it. What kind of grant it is. Sometimes they have very small, like, restrictions on allowable cost on what is it, what the AL number is, what the period of availability are. You'll see kind of everything that you need, the name of the federal funding agency, the pass-through, the AL number, the amount awarded, the amount date. Your grant award notification will have all of that on there, okay? I've done, you know, a couple federal direct awards where I've had to actually Google it. You know, I've talked to the program officer and they give me a dollar amount, you know, like, oh, hey, your year one allocation is this. And then I have to go and actually find it or communicate with someone. But if you have that, your Sifa generation will go a lot smoother, okay? Because you have all the information. At that point, you're just putting something together, okay? Same basis of accounting as the financial statements. Again, it's a part of our financial statements, a little subset in the back. Reconciliations, again, timeliness, right? Do not try to reconcile any grant at the end of the year. It's a nightmare. No one remembers where anything is. You haven't checked on, you know, your required documents throughout the year. If you are doing that all throughout the year, I'll tell you, our Sifa takes 30 minutes to prepare. And most of that is just because I get interrupted in the time that I'm doing it, right? Because everything's there, it's an export, you pull it in, you put it in a little template we have, and it's a piece of cake, okay? If you have situations where it's not the same, or there's some variances there, again, talk to your auditor, make sure that they understand. There may be some footnotes that you have to put on there. And again, this does go to the Federal Audit Clearinghouse, okay? What I will say is, you know, for us, you can pull every audit on the LLA's website. I've done that before. Look at everybody else's Sifa just if you want a template and kind of what they have and what it looks like. When I started out, I did that all the time, right? See what other people are doing. You know, if yours looks the same as theirs, then you're just dropping in numbers, okay? I talked about this a little bit, account string structure. Oh, we got 10 minutes. It really can. So this is another tip that you really want to work on if your account code string does not do what you need. You should be able to pull out any non-personnel cost in different categories, right? Is it personnel? Is it salary cost? Is it benefit cost? You know, equipment, things like that. What grant funds? We do site-based budgeting in our school, so I have to budget and allocate by school. So we have locations within there for each unit of that. So I can pull any one school, you know, what they spend on their federal awards, how much money they received on revenue, how much personnel, and all that's due to the account code string, okay? I just type in a little query in my financial software, and it produces it, exports it all out for me. It's a piece of cake, okay? So you really want to do that if you have not done that yet. Indirect cost allocation, I have this one. I'll tell you just a couple things about it. If you do not have a methodology already established for how you generate indirect costs, it's a challenge. It's not as easy as you know, just dividing what you think is direct cost and saying that's it. For us, the LDOE does it, right? They take all of our reports, they kind of generate what we have. I've been with some organizations, especially smaller ones, that don't have that established, and the federal government gets real tricky. They want to see your methodology if you have something direct from them. They don't want you just to pick a number. You know, what factors need to be considered, how often. These are kind of the tips if you don't have anything. You know, if something performed internally, what's an external cost, who's involved. You know, you can perform it by your government's own staff, but if you are small, I'd recommend that you kind of outsource this. Get someone who has, you know, the expertise in this. They can pull your data, pull your information. The cool thing is you don't really need it ever. You know, if you want to just charge direct costs to a grant, just charge a direct cost. It's kind of a little bonus to cover overhead. You know, it's nice, but if you know, are going through this and it's like, man, it's going to cost me $25,000 to get this group to come in to figure an indirect cost out for us, you may be better off just, you know, spend it all on direct costs instead, okay? Regardless of, you know, so this is the big thing from here. Management is still responsible. That's kind of the key words, you know, with grant management. It's always management. You know, you can't say it's this consultant or it's this auditor told me that's what my indirect cost is. You're still responsible for it. Okay, so whatever methodology you use, whatever you're going to charge to it, they're going to want to see all the details on it. The only time this has really been, you know, a big thing is when the Office of Inspector General came. They wanted to see everything. You know, how we found it, how the Louisiana Department of Ed found it. I had to go back and forth to kind of get their methodology. They wouldn't take like, hey, here's how they do it. It's a one pager. No, they want to see kind of everything. Okay, so, you know, be on the lookout for that. Independence may, you know, prevent your auditor from doing that. You may not be able to contract with your auditor to generate your indirect costs. You may have to get somebody else to do it. Again, you want ownership of that final work papers, because if anyone were to ever come back from the feds, you want to see exactly how they came up with that indirect cost methodology. They're not just going to take the number and like something on letterhead saying this is, you know, they told me it was this, so that's what we went with. You know, ensure data is appropriately classified, same thing with the account code. You know, these are some different things that can charge, you know, make you want to change, you know, the complexity of the calculation, different requirements of the grant, things like that. Yep, change in structure, change in the government. Again, I'd really, you know, my biggest takeaway from this is really if you don't have this already established, certainly be a part of the process no matter what, but you want to get someone that has expertise in there because you don't want to get messed up on it and then get in trouble over something like a percentage point on an indirect cost. You know, just go direct cost, charge it all to the grant until you can get something that's rock solid. You know, overhead percentages. And that's really all I have for that. So biggest things I want to kind of leave with you guys is, you know, don't reinvent the wheel. You know, when I talked to Diane about this, we were talking about the presentation, and I know a lot of local governments are scared because maybe they just got ARP money, or, you know, it's the same way back when everybody got R money. You know, we were freaking out because I'd never done a single audit. I'd never had, you know, $1 million in federal grant requirements, and it was just like kind of a scary time. what I will say, kind of the best practices are great, integrate those into your systems, but really find other people. You know, I think we're all better, right, when we all work together, because everyone has the same goal. We're all trying to do the best we can with the public dollars that we have. So, you know, find somebody and play to that ego. I'm serious, ask them to be a mentor. Anybody will do anything if you ask them to be your mentor, it's crazy. But really try to do that, and I think we'll all be in a really good spot. There's my email. Look, I told you. I'll try to answer questions, you know, but y'all are not my proteges, so I don't know if I'll get around to answer them in a timely fashion. But really, you know, shoot a question, anything, I'm more than happy to help if I know the answer. Or if I don't know the answer, I might be able to steer you to somebody who does, okay? So thanks, everybody.
Thank you so much, Charlie. We're going to take a break until 3:30.